All around the league, rookies are making their mark. Could be a new left tackle out there in Green Bay, at least temporarily. There's DBs all over the place. Seattle, Tennessee, maybe even San Francisco. We're going to get into all the rookies making their roundup today on Locked On NFL Draft.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of the Locked On NFL Draft Show. I'm your host, former NFL and AFL defensive back, Eric Crocker. And of course, I'm joined by my co-host, Ryan Tracy. He is at Ryan Tracy NFL on Twitter. I am at Eric_Crocker on Twitter. We want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. And of course, man, you know, Locked On Network, your team every day. Ryan, we're getting into some more rookie guys and just guys who are excelling in practice, training camps right now. The pads are on for pretty much everyone, and guys are continuing to stand out. So we're going to take our vision towards the offensive lineman now, and Zion Johnson over there playing for the LA Chargers, almost called them the San Diego Chargers, for the LA Chargers. And this was a guy who people expected to go first round, ended up going first round, big guy. He had a teammate that had some really good things to say about him, but it sounds like he's living up to the draft selection. He has lots of raw talent, and he's calm, cool, confident, and smart as hell. So, Zion Johnson, do you think this is like a real thing? And if he is good, how much does that benefit the offense for the Chargers with Justin Herbert at the quarterback position?
It's night and day. I mean, it makes such a huge impact for Justin Herbert to have an improving line that he can stand behind and do his thing, because he's more athletic than he really appears, but he's best from the pocket. And with Zion out there, he's lining up a right guard, right? I keep wanting to say that it's left. I keep messing that up, but there's a lot of information that you can help. He'll be on the right. You got Slater on the left at the new left tackle from last year, who actually outplayed expectations, right? So now you have two guys that you have to think can be your anchors of the future to really help you come along, right? For Herbert, I think that helps quite a bit. And anything you do to help a quarterback like Justin Herbert, who for the first time is in the Athletics top tier of quarterbacks, as written down by Mike Sando, where he polls all the NFL executives. That's a significant step. If you can help a guy of that caliber be that much better, that's wins on the end. It's one more closer to 17-0. So that's a big plus. I'm not surprised about Zion Johnson at all. Are you?
No, not at all. I mean, this is a guy who we did feel like can be really good in interior there. But, you know, you talked about helping his team and kind of the overall wins real quick, because I haven't really talked to you about the LA Chargers, and a lot of teams are expecting them to really take that next step. They're looking at Justin Herbert as a guy who, you know, potentially can win league MVP. People are putting their money down on him right now. Do you believe that the Chargers will be a playoff team this upcoming season? They were just short last year. Right. I think a lot of it had to do with their coach, and he said he's not going to change their philosophy, but they definitely go for it a lot on fourth down. And you don't knock it, because if it works, nobody's complaining about it. But I felt like that was something that kind of cost them in a couple games. But do you see them going and making the playoffs?
I do. I think this is the closest they've been to actually pushing the Chiefs out of the top spot in the AFC West. I think it's going to be a bar fight.
How many straight years has Kansas City won in AFC West? 6.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you see, like, just
until it happens, it hasn't happened. I'm just saying. But
right. Do you see Kansas City somehow maybe taking a step back, or?
I don't. I still think that they win it out, but I think the Chargers push them, and I think they have a matchup week 2 that's going to be critical to the division, because, like you said, with the decisions made by the coaching staff, that pushed one of those wins in the Chiefs' direction last year. If they control themselves a little bit better, I think they're in position where they could split this year. And that makes the division up for grabs, in my opinion. So it's going to be very, very tight. And if Zion can really help Herbert just be that much more, he doesn't need a whole lot more in terms of, like, he's got the instincts. He has good ball placement. It's just about completing drives to get you those points and not let your coach make decisions that put you in a bad spot. I think that's the difference between being 12-5 and, 8-9.
All right, so hopefully the coach doesn't put them in any more bad positions. And speaking of positions, we're still staying there on the offensive line. And Zach Tom out of Wake Forest, rookie, he's running with the ones over there in Green Bay with that quarterback behind him, Aaron Rodgers. We just talked about him with Romeo Doubs and how well he's been doing throughout camp. But now you have an offensive lineman who's filling in for Bakhtiari at left tackle, and it sounds like things are going well. So is this something that you were expecting? And real quick before you answer that, I did see Louis Riddick kind of quote tweet a report of how well Zach Tom was doing, and then he quote tweeted it with some of his analysis pre-draft and said, I can't find anything about his game that I don't like. So Zach Tom, is this something you were expecting?
I can't say I was expecting. I mean, the man plays the same position as David Bakhtiari. I mean, can you expect that when you get drafted? You could see it a year from now, maybe. But with the fact that Bakhtiari and Elgin Jenkins are both on the pup, that's what's opened this opportunity. And good for him for stepping into it. It doesn't surprise me at all that he's ready for it. Let me put it that way. I didn't know if Bakhtiari was going to be ready to go or not, so I can't say I expected it. But it doesn't surprise me because Zach Tom has the number one thing that I look for in offensive lineman, and that is he can move his feet. He was number 3 in the athletic matrix for the offensive line in this draft class, behind Cole Strange and Bernard Ryman, 2 guys that can move very, very well. So I think that bodes well for his overall ability. Now, did he give up more pressure than you like, more sack percentage? Sure. I think he was ranked in, he fell just into the 40s in terms of the production ranks. But that is a different thing. It's different coaching. He has a way that he can go forward. Nothing against Wake, but he's going to get better coaching at the NFL level. I think he's going to have an opportunity. And knowing what he's good at, I think this staff is going to be able to mold how they use him and what they try to put on his plate. There are ways that they can protect him as well.
We'll see how long he has to fill in, but high expectations for the Green Bay Packers. We talked about the Chargers. Green Bay Packers, man, they've been making moves, and anything shy of really a Super Bowl is kind of disappointing when it comes to Aaron Rodgers and how people, they're starting to get a little tense, a little tight with how they view him because of the lack of postseason success. But that's neither here nor there. Coming up next, we're going to go to the other side of the ball. You got a pair of defensive backs over in Seattle that are kind of playing very well as rookies right now in camp. We're going to get to that. But first, I want to talk about something that my guy Ryan Tracy was just stuffing in his mouth before we went live, and that is Built Bar. And if you haven't tried a Built Bar Puff, you are depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys. And guess what? There's a new flavor. Are you ready for it? It's delicious. Indulge yourself in the cookie dough. It's covered in chocolate. That's right. It's covered in chocolate. And Built, they've done it again. All right, let me introduce you to a new flavor. Cookie dough chunk puffs have a light, chewy texture, real cookie dough chunks, and of course, they are covered in 100% real chocolate. All of the joys of eating good cookie dough without the hassle of making it. All right, you don't gotta make it. Just pick up your Built Bar. All right, plus, the best thing about it, it's healthy for you. Cookie dough chunk puffs are only 160 calories and they have a whopping 12 grams of protein in them. Run to Built.com right now and snag a box for you and the family. It will be a perfect treat, or you can find a really good hiding place and just kind of hoard them all to yourself like I do. All right. Like all Built Bars, the new cookie dough chunk puffs are covered in 100% real chocolate. That means they are healthy and tasty, and chocolate covered cookie dough with a light, fluffy texture. So good. So good. And what's great about all the Built Bars is they're made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides a ton of good health benefits. Eat something that tastes good and is good for you. You're going to love the new cookie dough chunk puff, whether you want it for a snack, after your workout, late night, or just a quick bite to eat. Built is the perfect protein bar for you, and they taste better than any candy bar out there. So ditch all the calories, the fat, the sugar, and grab yourself a Built Bar. Go to Built.com right now. Use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off of your order. Again, use promo code LOCK15 at Built.com. All right, Ryan, so we're going to the other side of the ball now. Start with some defensive backs, some guys that have been kind of excelling up there in the Pacific Northwest. You got 2 cornerbacks, rookie guys for the Seattle Seahawks. One, I don't know, a guy that just won the Jim Thorpe Award, Coby Bryant, cornerback out of Cincinnati, and also Tariq Whoolin, a guy who was probably the second fastest cornerback out of the last year's class. 6'4", real 6'4", 205 pounds, tall, long corner. You know, Seattle likes those type of guys, but they're excelling. They're doing well. They're making plays, and it sounds like Coby Bryant's been the one that's been really hot.
Yeah, and I can't say that you didn't see that coming, right? There was all the attention on Sauce. But you and I talked about it, and I think you called it out first early in the draft process. Like, don't overlook the guy that isn't getting all that pub because he's locking down all the targets they don't want to throw at Sauce. And that's really where it comes down to it. He's instinctual. He plays well. He had our number 6. He and a guy we're going to talk about in a minute were actually tied for the Rogue Performance Consulting grades at number 6 corner in terms of their film grades. And he had the upside. So I'm not surprised at all. Whoolin, I think, was more of a stretch to see him be able to jump into the pro ranks and make that splash. How do you feel about where he's at?
Well, I think for Whoolin, it's good to see him make plays, and I expect him to have the splashy plays because when you look at a corner that's just that physically gifted, they're going to be making plays out there, right? And you look at a guy that kind of built similarly, maybe not quite as tall, but definitely up there in Antonio Cromartie. And he reminded me a lot of Cromartie with just the way he was able to move, being that longer corner, being really fast. Cromartie coming off of a torn ACL, I believe, coming out of college. So he didn't run as fast of a 40-yard dash time. But I believe if he would have tested when all the way healthy, you'd see a much better time, and then you would see more of the comps to Tariq Whoolin. 6'4", long arms, long limbs, a guy who I felt like had to learn to play with a little bit better anticipation. You know, when you have movements that are just that long, you have to really work on that so that you're kind of a step ahead because it's hard to mirror and match the movement skills of sometimes smaller receivers. So one thing about Seattle, they're going to put their guys in great positions to be successful with what they do well. We saw it with big long corners like Brandon Brown or obviously Richard Sherman, who's a future Hall of Famer. They made their money by not having to be guys who just chase these smaller guys around, shadow smaller receivers. But you know what? We're going to play this cover 3 system that everybody's going to call the Seattle 3, right? Some fire zone stuff in there where they're able to play press with outside leverage and funnel everything inside and then be able to make plays from that. If they continue to do that, and we'll see, I heard that Pete Carroll is kind of revamping his defense, going to more of a 3-4 to potentially play a little bit more man and use more athleticism. So maybe we'll see a little bit more too high from Seattle. But overall, I think between Tariq Whoolin and Coby Bryant, I think they have guys that have some versatile skill sets as well. Coby Bryant's a guy who, again, Jim Thorpe Award winner. And you talked about Sauce Gardner and everything that he did well. And people are starting to forget about Coby Bryant. I think part of it was he didn't test extremely well. There were people that were watching him and seeing his movement skills, and he wasn't the most twitched up guy. But I saw a very sound corner. I saw a really good technique. I saw a cornerback that definitely did not have any issues going in there, tackling, being physical. I thought he was heady from being able to play off or press coverage. He was a playmaker. You see him out there getting interceptions and making plays on the ball. So, again, the fact that both of these guys are in there and they're doing well, but more specifically, Coby Bryant and how well he's doing right now, I can't say this is something that I wasn't anticipating seeing.
Yeah, I mean, and the jump to the NFL, I think, is not as dramatic for him. Like you said, he's got the physicality part down. He's not shy sticking his face mask into the run game. Like that, I think, bodes well for a rookie transition. Whereas Whoolin relies on that upside, right, on those splashy plays. He had a bigger jump to get to the league, more similar to your jump when you went in the league. And that's more difficult, I think, in some ways. But if you can relax and just rely on your athleticism and trust in it, that's, I think, where you could make the biggest improvement. If you were going to give advice to one, what would it be?
It would be what I told him at the Senior Bowl, which was, hey, you need to call Antonio Cromartie and work with him. And I set it up. I hit Cromartie up. I said, hey, there's this kid here at the Senior Bowl, 6'4", 205, man. He reminds me a lot of you. He's really long, though, and he doesn't understand how to play with his and to use his length with the leverage and all that, right? And Cromartie, freak athlete, but even better, just the mental aspect of it and understanding concepts and understanding angles and all those things that really helped him be an all-pro cornerback. So I set it up. I don't know if Tariq Whoolin took the bait. I had them interact with each other. We'll see if he eventually does it, but that would be my biggest suggestion. Work with Cromartie because he understands what it feels like to be able to have to play with, I don't want to say limitations, but having that type of length, which can be a little difficult, especially when you're as long as Tariq Whoolin. Aside from that, you talked about, trusting your speed. Definitely. And I think trusting your speed will help you relax a little bit more and really kind of trust your technique. So if he can start to relax a little bit and do some of those things, we're talking about somebody that can definitely be a legit starting cornerback in the right system.
I'm looking forward to it. I love his upside, and you don't run into those guys every day, you know?
Yeah. But another guy that stood out, we got another defensive back, and we got another defensive end, all right, popping up on here. We're going to talk about both of those guys when we return. All right, Ryan, two guys here. One kind of continuing the defensive back thing. And before we start talking, I'm like, man, everything I'm seeing out come on social media right now about these rookies who's standing out in camp, a lot of receivers, a lot of corners. I'm like, man, I don't want to just talk about receivers and corners. Obviously, I love those two positions.
Yeah, you do.
I love those two positions, but I want to talk about the defensive linemen. I want to talk about edge rushers. So finally, we get to a corner and an edge. We'll start with the corner and finish up with the edge rusher. All right, Roger McCreary, defensive back out of Auburn. We're talking about a guy who I thought really was very versatile, could play inside, outside. Didn't test well at the combine, but I thought he bounced back well, running well at his pro day. All right, so he went from like a 4.55 to about 4.47, excuse me. Definitely a guy who didn't have the arm length, but when you watch him on film, everything says this is a good cornerback that can be very versatile for you. So another guy who I would say I'm not surprised to hear really good things coming out of Tennessee about Roger McCreary and his ability to be a sticky man coverage guy.
Yeah, I'm with you because there's always an aspect. Like, nobody can be everything. And obviously, like you said, not the athlete that Whoolin is, not anywhere near that, right? But one thing that he had, when you put all the production metrics together, what we did in our analysis, he came out number 2 in production on the ball. Snap in, snap out, target by target. That's what matters, right? And so even though he had this like lower grade in the athleticism, he had this higher production grade, right? Very much the opposite, or actually the opposite of Zach Tom that we talked about in the first segment, right? Although he's an offensive lineman, you're not going to hear me compare a DB and an offensive lineman that often. But the opposite, right? Like Tom's production was down, but his athleticism was sky high. And so like you have one thing that stands out about your game. And so for McCreary, he can rely on the instincts and the things that he's grown up with to make that production happen. Had the number 6 film grade again. So I think that if you have one aspect of your game that really stands out, that's something, that, again, that you can lean on and trust that helps you make the transition to the league. And my only question is, do you like him one place better or not? Or do we know if he's getting more nickel snaps than he is outside?
Well, I don't know just yet. I'd say from what I saw, and again, you start to know what maybe some of the scouts and teams are thinking when you see things at the Senior Bowl practice. And they had him playing a lot of nickel. He played a lot of outside as well. But just the fact that they started to think, hey, this is a guy that potentially is a nickel at the next level because maybe he doesn't quite have the speed on the outside or the length, right? So if he is getting work at the nickel position, not something that would be surprising. They did, Tennessee, just draft a nickel guy, Elijah Molden, out of Washington a year ago. So what happens with him? You know, he's a guy that was listed as safety, but played nickel for Washington, got nickel run for Tennessee. If you are going to play McCreary at the nickel spot, what happens with Elijah Molden? Right? Do you move him to a different spot? Do you just play him more at the safety position? I think those are answers that we'll probably find out pretty soon. But even then, aside from that, we got Drake Jackson, edge rusher for the San Francisco 49ers out of USC, a guy who really, when you watched him in college, he played a bunch of different positions. He went through 3 different coordinators in like 3 years. And each time they had him doing something different. He's a linebacker 1 year. Then he's an edge rusher. Then he's a linebacker. It's like, okay, what do you want me to do? Change it from like 4-3 defense, 3-4. His job was always changing. And each time it changed, they want him to do something different with his body. So he's a guy who ended up kind of falling a little bit in the draft and going late second round when really he had first round type potential, but couldn't just quite put it all together because of all the change. Well, right now in training camp, sounds like he's doing pretty darn good and really popping. Just as of today, there were guys from different networks just raving about what they saw from Drake Jackson, really filling in at the edge rusher spot. And when you have a guy like Nick Bosa opposite you, and you have a guy like Javon Kinlaw on that line and Eric Armstead, you are in a perfect position to really be able to get after the quarterback. He's not a guy that's going to have to be a 3-down edge rusher for the 49ers, but if he can just come in and use that bend and that nasty ability to be able to get around that corner and squeeze down around those offensive tackles, he's a guy that can have a terrific rookie year and kind of be a sneaky like Can he be defensive rookie of the year? Like on now defensive line, that's one thing that I'm willing to watch.
Hey, it's all about the stats. You get 12 sacks as a part-time pass rush specialist. Hey, you still get rookie of the year. It doesn't matter. It's all about how you affect the game, and that will do it. I'm excited for him because I know there was a question like, are they going to line him at linebacker? Or are they going to keep him in 3-point stance? It sounds like he's mostly playing down, right?
Yeah, mostly playing down, mostly playing edge. I think that's what they're going to do. 49ers obviously run a 4-3, so they have other guys that can kind of be like that tweener between the edge and off-ball linebacker. Maybe Ebukam, a guy like Samson Ebukam who played off-ball backer for the Rams, but then came to the 49ers and predominantly played more of an edge rusher type role. So he is kind of that tweener type guy. I think with Drake Jackson, they're probably trying to work to get him in a comfortable way to where, all right, this is going to be the best position for you and for you to have the most success. Just don't worry about anything else. Just bend that edge and get after the quarterback.
That's going to help him immensely. Let him do what he does. I hope that he can stay at the same weight for, two seasons in a row. What an idea.
Right. No changes. But you know what, man? That's going to do it for this episode of Locked On NFL Draft. We want to thank all of you for making us your first listen of the day. And, of course, for your second listen of the day, you got Locked On 49ers with myself, Brian Peacock. You got Locked On Chiefs with Ryan Tracy. And you got all the other podcasts across the Locked On network. But until next time, we'll see y'all tomorrow. Peace.